Thank you for having me. A little bit about Craig Rabita. I've spent my entire career in the nonprofit sector in Madison, believe it or not. When I first came to Madison in 1994, I worked for the Madison Symphony Orchestra as their marketing director. Didn't grow up listening to classical music, didn't play an instrument, but I ended up working for the Madison Symphony Orchestra, and it was really about, as I like to call it, getting butts in seats. I left the Madison Symphony Orchestra after about 4.5 years, and I ended up going to what is now known as a Grace Hospice Care. They were embarking on a capital campaign to build an inpatient unit. And I thought, wow, why not go to work for a hospice where they're raising money? The goal when I got there was $6 million, and then it was $8 million, and I think the building was built for $10 to $12 million. My time at hospice, about 2 years, led me to the UW Carbone Cancer Center. And in March of this year, I didn't necessarily believe it was going to be this way. I celebrated 25 years at UW Carbone Cancer Center. Thank you. Now, when I agreed to present, I had said to Carrie, you kind of get a little bit lax because you've done Zoom and everything is online and you don't get to interact with a group of people. And I was a little nervous about coming tonight, but I don't think you're probably any different than the 4th graders and then the 5th graders that I taught for religious education. And I just want to start with a little fun story because this happened about 6 weeks ago, and then I want to tell you the follow-up. So about 15 kids in my religious education class at a Catholic grade school, and there are a couple little boys, Joey and Billy, hysterical. And I remember correcting Joey in one instance, and he says under his breath to me, I kid you not, "Don't make me tell your wife about your gambling problem." And I thought, I have no gambling problem. And so the end of the year came, and I was like, I need to know who his parents are. I just really need to know. So I did a little bit of sleuthing. Lo and behold, his parents are 2 physicians at the University of Wisconsin. His father is an infectious disease doctor, and his mother is a neonatologist. So I emailed and I said, when your son takes it on the road many years from now, I want front row seats, and you need to give me tickets. And so the father emailed back, and he's like, Joey impresses us all of the time with things that come out of his mouth, but he's not always tactful. And I was like, okay. So on that note, if I can deal with 15 5th graders, I can certainly hang with all of you. So the big question in the room is, what in the world is a comprehensive cancer center? And there's literature that I've handed out. But let me give you a little bit of history about UW Carbone Cancer Center, and let me go back to the 70s. So in 1971, the National Cancer Act was established. And when that was established, it was established to further cancer research. It was actually put into play by our president, President Nixon. So the University of Wisconsin was one of the first 6 comprehensive cancer centers in the US, if you will. We are funded by the National Cancer Institute, so we're a federal body. We're the only comprehensive cancer center in Wisconsin. There are 57 in the US. We go through a rigorous review every 5 years where they bestow us with more money. And our mission is multifold. We are focused on research, we're focused on prevention, treatment, and education. This is where it gets confusing, if you will, because all comprehensive cancer centers are not the same. We are not a standalone facility. All of our patient care is done through UW Health, UW Hospital, if you will. So our patients are seen at UW Hospital and clinics, as well as clinics throughout the state. But we're a part of the medical school, and we have influence across the entire campus. Confusing at best, convoluted at best. But the big question, I think, for everyone is what truly sets us apart. And I want to backtrack for a second. The video that you just saw was a video that was shown at the Guarding Against Cancer event last Friday night. And so you're the second group to see the video. Nancy emailed me at midnight when she got home, and she's like, "Oh, Craig, wow, it was an exciting event." And she had had scans earlier that day, and she's like, "I want you to know my scans were good." And I'm reading this email at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and I'm tearing up. But what truly sets a comprehensive cancer center apart? What's the coolness factor, if you will? So the same physicians who are treating patients at UW Hospital and clinics have research labs. They're not only treating patients, but they're doing cool research in their labs. We have 350 researchers across UW-Madison. So some of them are actually physicians, but some of them are in the vet school, in the business school, in the engineering school. And we focus on 3 different types of research: basic, clinical, and translational research. So basic is anything that happens in the lab. It could be in a petri dish. Clinical is any time that a patient is testing a new drug or a treatment. They're on a clinical trial. And translational is what kind of bridges the gap between basic and clinical. The thing about UW Carbone is that we've had some really cool firsts, and I handed out a little cheat sheet, if you will. I jokingly call it the dollar bill. You can look at it later because it's actually the size of a dollar bill. It was created for our development directors to actually give to our advisory board members, and they're like, "We want a cheat sheet." So when we're out and about and we want to talk about Carbone, we have something to use. So some of the cool things, some of the cool firsts at UW Carbone: we invented Mohs surgery, which is used to commonly treat skin cancer. We were involved in establishing the SPF ratings, which is the National System on Sunscreen Products, developed tamoxifen, which is one of the best therapies for treating and preventing cancer. And we also developed tomotherapy, a specialized form of radiation oncology. So research, treatment. Our physicians are specialists. So when you come to UW Carbone or UW Health to be treated, we have physicians who just focus on lung cancer, who just focus on breast cancer, who just focus on melanoma. They're specialists, they're not generalists, they just see that type of patient. We have a multidisciplinary approach to treatment, and what that means is that we are going to cluster around you as a patient. So your experience may not be the same. You may be coming for chemotherapy, you may be coming for surgery, you may be coming for radiation, and all of these different types of physicians are going to work in tandem to give you the very best possible treatment based on the type of cancer you have and based on the type of stage of cancer. We treat about 33,000 people annually from Wisconsin and beyond. And as I said, we're really in the business of testing new drugs and treatments via clinical trials. It's kind of one of the big things that sets us apart. Education. We are at the forefront of training future physicians and researchers. We also educate other healthcare providers. We're also in the business of informing the public about screening, prevention, and diagnosis. And we like to think of ourselves as Wisconsin's cancer resource. So when you want to know what's happening when it comes to educational services, we like to think that UW Carbone is where it's at. And probably the biggest thing, the coolness factor, and probably what has kept me motivated even on the darkest days, is that we're in the business of providing hope, which is immeasurable, because we know that research saves lives, and we know that we're allowing patients to live longer. And quite honestly, at the University of Wisconsin, we've had a global impact. There are a lot of things that were developed here, produced here, that are now being used across the country. Not everyone can say that, and it's pretty cool. So the big question, and probably why I'm here with you all tonight, and I'm going to touch upon a number of things, is who am I communicating with, right? Who am I communicating with? And more importantly, what am I communicating? Because I've told you we have 350 researchers across the UW-Madison campus. We treat and do research for all of these types of cancer. And what's the best way to communicate if I'm selling hope? For some of you in this room, you sell tangible products, I'm guessing, but I'm not in the business of selling tangible products. I think I'm more in the business, if you will, of communicating and selling hope, which is a hard thing to bottle, it's a hard thing to measure, and it's a hard thing to market. So briefly, if I were to break down the audiences that I communicate with, and everyone in marketing communicates with, we communicate with patients, we communicate with donors, supporters, and the general public. We communicate with healthcare providers as to how do you refer to us, how do you get your patient in Appleton to be seen here. We communicate with the science and a research community, and then obviously we communicate internally. For tonight, what I want to talk about for audience-driven marketing is how do we primarily communicate with patients, donors, and the general public. And so the big thing is storytelling, storytelling, storytelling. Probably similar to the Nancy video that I just showed all of you. But let me give you a couple of examples of things that I think have resonated recently when it comes to storytelling at the University of Wisconsin Carbone Cancer Center. Meet Dusty Deming. Dusty Deming is not only a colon cancer physician, but he is also a colon cancer patient. So how many times are you going to meet a physician who is diagnosed and being treated for the same type of cancer that they're treating patients for? We've told Dusty's story a couple of times, but we told his story again last year, and we do it in a multi-purpose approach. So in January, we rolled out his story in our e-newsletter, which goes out to about 5,000 e-newsletter subscribers. The story in the e-newsletter is a limited amount of copy because we all know that people don't like to read. And our average click rate for our e-newsletter is about a 45% open rate and a 3% click-through rate. So that was January in our e-newsletter. We also have a biannual newsletter that comes out twice a year and was also handed out to all of you. We shared a story in that publication as well. We mail out to about 40,000 individuals. And then in February, we turned around and once again used his story as a media story. So 25 stories were placed online, broadcast. Our coverage reached approximately 416,000 broadcast viewers and a potential audience of more than 35 million online viewers. And then after that, we shared his story via social media. So this is just one example of like one story that we, measured out over the course of many, many different months. Here's another story that's coming up, actually. Meet Lydia. Days after giving birth to her son, Lydia received a rare cancer diagnosis. While this is highly curable, Lydia had to endure a difficult regimen of chemotherapy in addition to recovering from birth and bonding with her son. We are using her story in our May e-newsletter. We will use it in our May social media. And then, of course, I think that my colleague who pitches to the media will probably also turn around and use this as a media pitch for Mother's Day. So, storytelling is kind of worth its weight in gold. Like, you have really good stories and you want to communicate them. So our stories live in a number of places. As I indicated, our monthly e-newsletter, social media, media pitches, and then we have media who come to us and say, do you have a good story? And we're like, we have 1,000 good stories. Our biannual hard copy newsletter, we share patient stories at educational events and fundraising events similar to what I showed you with the Nancy video. And the thing that I cannot stress enough for everyone in this room, because I think we're so used to like going from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, is we strongly believe in multi-purpose use. Like, how can we tell the story in many different ways? Because we have a really good story. So, yes, when we're all feeding the beast when it comes to content and things like that, the question that I would pose to everyone in the room is, how can you take a really good story and maybe multi-purpose use it over the course of several weeks or several months, or maybe dust it off for a follow-up a year later? So for most stories at UW Carbone, we always ask when stories come to us or when we kind of find stories, we always say, is there a patient angle? Is there a patient angle to this? Is the story unique? We often have to tell our clinical staff or ask them, is there a hook to the story? And they're like, what do you mean by a hook? And I'm like, does the patient or the family have this really interesting background? And they're like, oh, you mean like so-and-so and blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, yep, that's what makes the story unique. We always ask ourselves, will this inform, educate, or maybe even entertain? And you may say entertain when it comes to cancer. Yeah, because people find humor sometimes in the smallest of things. And then as I said, and I'll continue to reiterate, can we use the story in different ways? Why are we intentional in storytelling? We are intentional in storytelling for a number of different reasons. We're inspiring action and we're building relationships. We're enhancing our fundraising. We're demonstrating credibility, and we're amplifying reach and engagement. So we're always, always, always intentional in which stories we tell and how we tell them. And what defines success in storytelling, and this isn't in any specific order. I think this would probably be true of any nonprofit. And I'm not going to read exactly in the order that they're presented, but what defines success in storytelling? It's probably connection. So for the people in this room who watched the Nancy video, you probably felt something, maybe a little bit of something. Fundraising, and then specifically is if there's some sort of call to action. Is there some sort of call to action? Are we asking our audience to do something? And sometimes it may be overt, and sometimes it may be subliminal. I want to move off of storytelling, and I want to talk about a couple of sensitive topics that I have to deal with when it comes to working in the cancer arena. So here are just a few examples of things that are kind of sensitive when it comes to working in cancer research, working in cancer treatment, battle language. And I'm going to read this because I want to get it right. So the use of battle language to describe cancer, like fighting, winning, and losing, can be problematic for many individuals. While some may find it empowering, others feel it puts undue pressure, minimizes the severity of the disease, or doesn't accurately reflect their experience. So how many times do we hear someone is fighting the battle against cancer? We say these things too, but sometimes we catch ourselves because the people who lose their battle, like my mother, who died in 2015, who I miss every single day, she wasn't a loser. She died because she had metastatic breast cancer. She was not a loser. And I don't think that she would have defined her cancer experience as a battle, because that's not who she was. Another thing that we often deal with is cure versus no evidence of disease. So sometimes it's hard for us to say someone's been cured when probably the better terminology is there's no evidence of disease. Another thing is the vulnerability of cancer patients. Like, you have to really take a step back and think, do you want to share your story? Do you want to tell people I'm going through this experience, and what does it mean to me to be a cancer patient? So we really have to be careful when we approach people as to, are they willing to share their story? And we know that we are not going to push it if they do not want to share their story. The other thing, which has been really interesting for me in my 25-year career, is that some cancers get more love than other cancers. And what do I mean by that? Think about breast cancer. There are a lot of things that are pink in October, but then I also want to mention pancreatic cancer. It's a huge, deadly type of cancer. And how much awareness does pancreatic cancer get in comparison to breast cancer? And Paige Azuka, she's right in the back, is an employee at UW Carbone, and she's involved with pancreatic cancer awareness and fundraising. So if you want to learn more, you should definitely talk to her at the end of the night. And then the other thing, which is always difficult, because I will be the first to admit, making research relatable is sometimes really difficult, because sometimes you meet with scientists who not only do their science, they're in their research lab, but they're also meeting with patients. And they're talking to you and they're like way up here. And you're like, what in the bleep are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't like science. Like, I appreciate science, but I'm not a scientist. I'm good at math, but I'm like, okay. And I had a friend once say to me, like, Craig, what is it with, scientists? Like, what if they have some breakthrough, but they're in the bathroom and the breakthrough happens? I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, Kathy. I don't know what to tell you. So this is why we always take research and we think, can we tie a patient into the research, and can we, not dumb it down, if you will, but can we make it relatable? Because sometimes scientists, brilliant people, but I literally don't know how they put their pants on in the morning. Sometimes I don't. Love them, they're great, but I'm like, you should not do media. You should not do media. Here are the 3 essential strategies, if you will, when it comes to sensitive topics. And I think that, when I put the slide together, I think this should resonate for everyone in the room. Know your audience. Be genuine in your approach. And my big mantra, and I've said this for many years, less is usually more. Sometimes I think we like to over-communicate and overshare and over-talk about things, but less is always more, always. So I want to move on to probably my last segment of my talk. And what I love to call it is developmental marketing, which is Craig's terminology, is developmental marketing. So when I started years ago at Madison Symphony Orchestra, I'm very green. I graduated from UW-Eau Claire. I went to Kobe High School, as in the cheese. I grew up in a very small town of 800 people where everyone was related to everyone else. And I come to Madison and I go to work for the Madison Symphony Orchestra, and I meet the development director, and here I am, like, I have to get butts and seats, but as the development director, she's working with donors, she's giving away my tickets. I'm like, all right, I don't understand. And then I have to sell advertising space in the program booklet, and she's giving it away to donors and businesses, and I'm like, I don't understand. And, but I grew to have such a admiration for her, because she'd always be, and this was, back in early 1994, she'd always say, okay, I'm going to dial for dollars now. And I'm like, what do you mean? She'd go sit in her cubby and she'd pick up the phone and she'd call people and be like, we're having a symphony performance and I want to know if your family or your corporation will underwrite it. And at the time, I was always like, you're taking all of these things of mine, like I have to work and you're just handing them out to donors. But I grew to understand that there's such a synergy between marketing and fundraising when it comes to a nonprofit. We have to work in synergy. And so I work with fabulous development directors who, they meet with people who have capacity to give large donations. We work with fabulous event staff who coordinate fundraising events. And so developmental marketing, AKA cancer fundraising, carries many different modes of transportation at UW Carbone. And the science and the art of fundraising is, once again, it's all about connection, it's all about authenticity, and then it's always about, are you going to give back? So have you pulled at someone's heartstrings, and have they determined that they're going to give money to you? And then how do current or prospective donors engage with us at UW Carbone? It could be marketing materials. It could be any of the materials that I have in front of you today. They could be attending fundraising events. They could get a solicitation from us, or they could have a one-on-one interaction. So when it comes to marketing, once again, the marriage of marketing and fundraising at UW Carbone looks like this. So we have a number of marketing materials. We have the biannual newsletter that comes out. We have things about if you want to put us in your will or estate planning. So marketing materials, fundraising events, Roll and Stroll, which I indicated Paige is heavily involved with, and then Bowlin' for Colons, love the name. I shared an office years ago with an event coordinator who met with a physician who wanted to start an event, and he said, Bowlin' for Colons, and he's like, oh, Ann, we could do a fishing event and call it Trolling for colons. And we could do a run walk and call it strolling for colons. And Anne looks at him and says, we'll start with the bowling event. So we have fundraising events. We have fundraising events that we coordinate, but then there are several people throughout the community and throughout the state who do fundraising events for us. We have patient educational events. We have an awareness night for pancreas cancer. We have an upcoming, this is the second annual reunion for anyone who's had a bone marrow transplant at UW Carbone, a leukemia and patient care event. So we're engaging with people that come in because they want to learn more about their cancer type or they want to know more about research that's happening at UW Carbone. We have educational events. We had a huge open house at the beginning of April where we invited people in. We had over 1,000 people. We let them go on research lab tours. So we had researchers take people on lab tours. We had inflatables. We had interactive stations for children. And we had some lectures and presentations. So it's another way that we want to engage with community. Solicitations. So if you're on our list or if you express some sort of interest, you'll probably hear from us with some form of solicitation at some point. And then donor interactions. Not my area, but I just want to give you some examples of what our development directors do. And I have to say, I work with a fabulous group of development directors. So they plan one-on-one meetings with donors. They organize tours of our lab facilities. There's event attendance. Sometimes it's a check presentation where they're bringing us money and we want to take the picture of the big check. And then there's so much more. But it's all about relationship building. It's always about relationship building. Like, how do you build the relationship? Here's a sneak peek. Not a lot of people have seen this. We're rolling out something called Carbone Conquers Cancer. We're profiling about 38 to 40 of our researchers in kind of we wanted to do a little superhero motif. We've had a little pushback. But here is Dr. Capitini. He's currently the acting director of UW Carbone. He is not only our acting director, but he treats children with pediatric cancer. And so we talk about his superpower and we talk about his superstar status. So we're going to be rolling that out sometime this summer. So how does marketing contribute to fundraising? It's all about clear, consistent messaging, personal stories, and showing some form of direct impact. Okay, I would be remiss if I didn't kind of wrap up somewhat of my presentation talking about what's happening politically in the world right now. And I'm not going to state my personal opinion, but I'm going to read something that came across my desk the other day, probably last week, that I put into this presentation. I think it's a pretty powerful statement. So, every day in cancer centers across America, physicians, nurses, researchers, and staff walk into work knowing they are someone's best and sometimes only hope. They don't do it for headlines. They do it for the mother newly diagnosed, the grandfather in remission, the child clinging to a second chance. They do it because they believe in a future where cancer no longer wins. This is not about politics. It's about people. It's about protecting the progress we've made and accelerating the hope we can still deliver. If we cut support for cancer research now, we aren't trimming a line item, we're turning our backs on the next cure. So we say this clearly to every legislator and every American. Cancer research saves lives, cancer care saves lives, and the people doing this work deserve your support. I couldn't have said it any better. It's true, yeah. I actually was shocked. The National Cancer Institute, like their communication staff who communicate with cancer centers, their whole staff has been decimated. I'm like, how does that happen? So I want to end with just a little bit of a story about these two individuals that I shortly met 25 years ago, actually. So on the left is Chris McHugh, and on the right is Linda Nielsen. They met when they were both going through breast cancer chemotherapy, and they decided that they wanted to give back in some way. So what did they do? They started making buttons at their kitchen table to give to cancer patients going through chemotherapy. And the button said, "Cancer sucks," and other things. Lo and behold, they became a national company, and they ended up selling merchandise to benefit cancer research not only at UW Carbone, but across the US. And sadly, Chris, on the left, died in 2003, shortly after her 40th birthday. But I just have to say, I'm going to dedicate my talk to both of them because sometimes it's really difficult every day when you wake up to think about, are you making a difference, right? You look in the mirror, are you making a difference? Are you moving the needle? Are things progressing? And we are. And I had the luxury, if you will, to meet these two ladies very early on in the infancy of their company called Choose Hope. The company went to another owner in 2019. This past week, I've heard that it's been sold to a company in Indiana, and I'm like, it's still progressing, if you will. So here's to you, Chris McHugh. I'll never forget the time that we polka'd in my office back in the day. So with that, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come and talk a little bit about what I do. This is worth its weight in gold. It's kind of, I call it the dollar bill, jokingly to the development directors. So I'm gifting you with this. I'm gifting you with a newsletter. But most importantly, I'm gifting you with a lovely insulated bag that every time you go to Hy-Vee or Aldi's or somewhere else, you have a little bit of a giveaway to remember me. So thank you for allowing me to come and talk. I appreciate it.
Bravo. Thank you. We're going to open it up for some questions, so you can keep standing there. I'd like to open it up to the audience first before I dive into mine. Does anyone have a question for Craig?
So you talked about the same story over, a certain amount of months, and you were doing different formats, like the newsletter first, then social, then the hard copy. Are you changing the story at all, or are you just copy, repeat?
We changed the story.
Okay.
We changed the story, and it's not always e-newsletter, social media. Like it could be the media pitch first, and then we're like, oh, this is a really great story. In addition to a TV station telling it, we want to tell it ourselves. So usually there's a little bit of a different bent depending on which tactic or strategy we're using. It's never copy and repeat.
And so, follow-up question. So are you tailoring it to the audience, knowing which audience is reading that social media post or which one's reading your newsletter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all about your audience.
Another hand?
So I work for an ad agency that does advertising for a nonprofit, and there are a lot of amazing stories to share. However, over the past few years, there have been a lot of privacy concerns with the families, and so while the stories are still really important, we've been able to tell them less due to those family privacy concerns. And I guess I was just wondering, if you have any ways that you've gotten around that in the past, because I assume that's probably something that comes up with cancer patients as well.
So every single cancer patient that we profile, if you will, they sign a release form. They sign a release form saying they are okay with us sharing their story. So I was actually at the hospital today. We are shooting a new clinical trials video. And the people in the video are not clinical trials patients, but I said, are you a patient at UW? I need you to sign this release form. So we have a release form, and every time we go to a patient or a family member, we say, that's one of the first things we say after they have consented, if you will, to share their story. We say, we need you to sign this release form, because by signing this release form, you understand that your story could be told here. You understand that the photo that we take of you could show up in a billboard at a later time. You could be in a video, depending on how we approach the situation. So it's always about patient consent for us, and we're never going to tell a story if a patient hasn't consented. Like that's just never, it's just never the way it's going to be. So all of our patients sign release forms. They're on file. We're audited. People look at things. We go through the process too that, let's say, the Dusty Deming story, if I want to tell it 3 years from now, and we will also call the patient later on and say, are you okay sharing the story? Sometimes we call the patient to find out the patient has passed away, so we're not going to tell the story, or we have to pull photos or video. But if we are going to retell something or share something years down the road, we always ask for their consent again. Is that helpful? I don't know the answer as to how to get around your privacy concerns, though.
Yeah, it's definitely helpful. We also use release forms. We've just had families come to us later when their kids are being noticed at school and, kind of being called out for being in these ads. And then we've pulled them for them just because obviously that's our top priority with that. So yeah, we're just looking for ways to continuing to tell the stories, but obviously it makes it less personal when you're not able to use faces or names or anything like that. So
the other thing that we do, which I don't necessarily advocate for, but we do use stock photography for flyers and other things. And while it's not our patients, it's photography, and I think photography or faces usually, resonate with people. So probably not the most ideal, but I think there's a way to get around it. What kind of nonprofit do you?
Yeah, so I do advertising for Habitat for Humanity and Habitat Restore. So it's sometimes those families who their kids are being noticed, and a lot of those families are more low income and don't want to be noticed, and so they are signing these release forms. But then when their kids are being seen on TV and YouTube and all those different platforms, because we do it, you guys do, of trying to layer different media. So then at times it can get a lot for those families. But I like your idea of using stock footage, but still maybe telling a story, just using different faces.
The other thing that you could do, here's just a thought, is not necessarily show the child's face. You could show them playing, if you will, but maybe it's the backs of their heads or what have you. Do you identify the family by name?
Typically not.
Yeah.
Typically not. It's just when their kids are being noticed at school that's when it becomes a problem typically.
I think sometimes there's a clever way to either shoot video or have photography where you're not actually showing a child's face. It's a little tricky, but I think it's something that could be done when push comes to shove. You're welcome. Who else?
Anyone?
Oh God, there's more. Okay.
Maybe a fun one. I was just curious. You had mentioned. I picked up when you said I think it's in the newsletter when you said the superhero sort of theme maybe was getting some pushback. That kind of perked me up a little bit. So maybe that's, you don't want to get into the inner gears of that. But I was curious about what sort of fun or experimental sort of things are you allowed, I guess, creative license to, hey, we're going to try this, so we're not going to run it through multiple layers of...
Oh, we've done a lot of fun things over the years. One video that actually went viral, and I should have played it, is I went to a meeting with a bunch of clinical folks, and one manager said, got a call, someone's niece is coordinating part of the Badger Band to come and serenade a woman on her last chemo treatment. And I'm like, we're totally there. And at the time, we had someone who not only did social media, but she wrote copy, she took her own video, she took her own photos. So we went, I kid you not, she shot the video, she took still photography, she put it together that afternoon, and it went viral. And we watched the whole week as people watched this video of a woman coming out of her very last cancer treatment being serenaded by the UW marching band. And I'm like, wow. When I think back too, we've also done fun things like we did something called Mustache Madness, where we pitted some of our providers against local celebrities. So we had men grow their mustaches, and then we had women, create fake mustaches, and we paired them against one another in sort of like a Big Ten show off, if you will. Yeah. So we've done a lot of creative things. In answer to your question about the whole superhero thing, I think because I work within UW Health globally as well, sometimes there's like, it's a little, you're jockeying for position, if you will, because they're like, oh, we like to use the superhero sort of concept with children, and we're like, we want to use it with adults. And so I have the development directors pushing me this way, and then I have the graphic people saying no, and then the push and the pull, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the middle. And like, I want to help the development directors all of the time. Like I want, and so my job is kind of to run interference, if you will, to figure out how to maneuver the political nuances of working at a university. And that's one of the things that I should say is it's not that I love to dodge situations, but I'm like, how can I work around it? I love figuring out how to work around it when you work at a huge academic healthcare system. And if you sat and thought about it, you could probably identify yourself all of the roadblocks to not do something. I think in my entire career, I'm like, how do I work around the roadblocks to maneuver the situation? And so my mantra also is, until they figure out what I've really been doing in 25 years, they can come for me whenever they want to come for me. It's worked, and I always used to say, if my past boss would realize how I've spent money, I don't spend money like a drunken sailor, but if we want to have a good video, I'm going to hire a good video production company like Wesley or someone like that. You have an event that's making millions of dollars. You can't have something that looks like a piece of bleep. Okay.
What was your most rewarding campaign that you've worked on?
Oh my most rewarding campaign. Oh my gosh. You know what? The whole start, when I started years ago, I'm not going to talk about campaign. I'm going to talk about something else that I didn't even talk about tonight in my presentation. So annually, I coordinate a professional education conference that happens every fall at Monona Terrace. We have about 400 healthcare professionals from throughout the state come. It's a continuing medical education event for physicians, nurses, social workers, clinical trials associates. Patients can come if they want to. I love putting that event together. We have 4 keynote speakers. We have 4 AM workshops. We have 4 PM workshops. We have about 75 exhibitors, pharmaceutical companies that give me $1,000. I'm like, I'll take your money. And we have fabulous keynote speakers. So we had Ethan Zahn. Anyone familiar with Ethan Zahn? Survivor fame? Any Survivor fans? He's a cancer survivor himself. And so he came and was one of our keynoters. And this year, our whole theme is focused on cancer caregiving. And we have a comedian coming. His name is Jesus Trejo. He cared for both of his parents who had cancer, and we'll just see how racy he gets, but hopefully not. No.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask. This up there. First of all, how come all the dudes sat in one row? I just noticed that. Some things will never change, I guess.
No.
Anyway. I'm assuming...
and they're all spaced out except for you two. I don't understand.
We're close.
Yeah.
Just met him, but he's a good guy.
Family.
I'm assuming that with this type of marketing, with the empathy and the emotion that's involved, the video is probably one of the best ways to tell these stories. Do you have a favorite channel? I hate the buzzword omni-channel, but is there a approach that you find is most effective, or is it a combination of all of these for delivering these stories through video, through I'm a copywriter, so I believe in the power of words, but video is always going to deliver this kind of message best, especially with a music track behind it. It's going to get you.
I love video. I feel like we don't do video enough. I actually texted the Cancer Center director who was at the Guarding event, and I said, if I could do video for everything, I would do video for everything. The video of Nancy is interesting. So it's a little under 4 minutes. We are going to take that and we're going to splice it down to about 2 minutes, and we're going to use it on social media. We have also, because Nancy asked, what she indicated in her video, she has a huge event in her backyard, but now it's at a local Madison establishment. We are going to weave in some information about her event, and so we're going to re-splice the video that way. And there's one other way that we were going to use it. So a lot of the video that I create is for the guarding event, or it's some big event. It could be Andy North and Friends or Guarding Against Cancer. But then there are other videos, like a clinical trials video, which is an explainer about what clinical trials are. So yeah, I love doing video, but video is also expensive.
Create once, use many ways.
Yeah, so we're gonna slice and dice and tell the Nancy story more than once. It was powerful, wasn't it not? Yeah. I mean, EMT on skis. She met her husband skiing, and
She's a great.
They're cute.
yeah.
She's got a personality to go with it. So.
She said to me, she's like, "Craig, are you coming to the guarding event?" I said, "No, Nancy." She's like, "Oh, you do too many events?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna have you come out to my house. You're gonna do lunch. We're gonna have lunch. We're gonna talk." And I think she's like my new best friend. She's great. She's on a cruise right now.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, Melissa.
This might be a little bit of a challenge question, but
Yeah.
it might also be an opportunity to talk about navigating lots of stakeholders and complicated giant organizations. In an early slide, you said avoid the battle language. Jump cut, 10 slides later, Carbone conquers cancer. Battle language. So, hot seat.
Thanks, Melissa. Wow.
Get my finger gun out.
Yeah, no, it's okay. You know what? There's ways to work around everything, and we're all.
No one size fits all.
There's no one size fits all, and in this instance with the Carbone Conquers Cancer, we are appealing to donors who have capacity to hopefully give us substantial amounts of dollars for research. Yeah. So, and who doesn't love alliteration, right? I love alliteration personally, but
Just noticing.
yeah, no, that's fair. Thank you for calling me out. I feel like a fraud now, but no.
No, because I also work for a massive healthcare organization.
Yeah.
There's lots of stakeholders, and there's no shortage of opinions.
No, there's no.
There's no shortage of red tape and stuff to navigate, and always say this, never say this. Oh, whoops, now that changed. So it's an example of that.
The thing I will say,
Place, right?
I think the thing that I will say for the Carbone Conquers Cancer thing that I gave you the sneak peek for, it's a very, very limited audience.
Right.
Very limited audience. It's not going to be on the Beltline. It's not something we're going to roll out in our e-newsletter. Like it's for a specific designated smaller audience.
I just wanted you to speak to that a little bit.
Thank you for putting me on the hot seat.
No, it was a softball. That was a softball. What's next?
Hope it's okay for one more question, Craig. Just want to say real quick, Craig's amazing. I work with him a lot, and I'm just happy to be here to learn about your expertise because you're pretty awesome. So thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
One thing to just go off the conversation we were just having about battling and surviving or being a survivor. I run into that a lot too, and I catch myself so much. I create a newsletter for pancreas cancer, but one thing that I do differently, I think, is I have not a lot of survivors, but survivors write their own stories. Sometimes I'll do my own, I'll interview them, but I find it really interesting to hear their own voice because it's also like therapeutic for them and healing for them. Wondering, is there a platform for storytelling from the survivors themselves, or is that something that could be a potential? I know the VA has like a storytelling program, but it's something that I'm just kind of thinking about as we're discussing a little bit more to see. So we're talking about storytelling, having a voice. Just wondering.
I think we'd always be open to something. I will also say too, and this was not something that I spoke of, but I will say for anyone when it comes to the terminology survivor, the stance at UW Carbone and the stance that I always like to take as well is that the minute you're diagnosed, you're a survivor. You're surviving cancer. You're not 5 years out or 10 years out or 15 years out. You're a survivor the minute you're diagnosed. So just another thing to remember. But yes, Paige, let's chat.
Sweet. Thanks, Craig.
Anyone else?
It sounds like Carbone needs a podcast.
We do have a podcast. It's kind of led by our Cancer Health Disparities Initiative. So a lot of diverse people that are being interviewed by a man named Joshua Wright, who's in our outreach office. But we would like further reach, so.